Stone Age people ate better than we do. We think we have reached the pinnacle of culinary evolution with access to any food at any time of the year. But what if our bodies are still tuned to a completely different diet, shaped by hundreds of thousands of years of survival in the wild? Let's travel back to the harsh and beautiful world of the Stone Age. There is no agriculture, no shops, not even salt and spices as we know them. Watch the video to the end, and you will learn which single product from the ancient human diet is considered ideal by modern dietetics, and why we hardly eat it. For Stone Age man, there was no distinction between a grocery store and the environment. The whole world around him was one big, ever-changing source of food. Every hill, forest, or river was viewed through the prism of potential prey. This approach shaped a completely different perception of nature. People knew how to read the landscape like an open book, noticing the slightest signs of edible plants or animal tracks. Their survival depended directly on their observation skills and deep understanding of the ecosystem. Every day was filled with micro-discoveries. Berries ripened here, herds passed there, and edible larvae could be found under this rock. The search for food was not a routine, but a constant intellectual and physical exercise. Do you agree with this? Please tell us what you think about this. Every opinion is valuable. The diet was not constant. It changed radically depending on the season, climate, and migrations. Plant foods predominated in summer, animal foods in winter. This seasonal cycle was a natural mechanism that ensured a supply of diverse nutrients. Gathering was no less important than hunting. Women and older members of the group spent most of their time searching for nuts, seeds, berries, and roots. These plant components made up a significant and stable part of the diet. This constant search for food required incredible physical activity. Scientists estimate that Stone Age people walked an average of 10 to 15 kilometers per day. Such exercise was an integral part of their healthy lifestyle. Understanding the world as a source of food also meant knowing which plants were poisonous and which areas were dangerous. Mistakes in this regard were fatal, so knowledge was passed down from generation to generation as the greatest treasure. The main source of energy and building material for the body in the Stone Age was the meat of wild animals. It was not just a food product, but the basis of survival, especially in cold climates. Hunting required collective effort, strategy, and a deep understanding of the habits of the prey. Unlike the meat of modern farm-raised domestic animals, game meat was much leaner. It contained less total fat, but was rich in beneficial omega-3 fatty acids. This balance of fats is considered ideal for the human cardiovascular system. Hunters caught a wide variety of animals, from small rodents to large herbivores. This provided a variety of nutrients. Different types of meat contained different sets of amino acids, vitamins, and minerals. The capture of a large animal was a real celebration for the whole group. The meat was not eaten immediately. It was divided among all members of the community according to established rules. This strengthened social ties and ensured the survival of the group. In addition to muscle tissue, primitive people actively consumed internal organs. The liver, kidneys, heart, and brain of animals are true concentrates of vitamins and minerals. For example, the liver is a rich source of vitamins A, B12, and iron. The lack of salt as a preservative meant that meat had to be processed in other ways. It was dried in the sun, cured in the wind, or smoked over a fire. These methods preserved nutrients and allowed for small reserves to be created. But how did people get energy and vitamins during those long periods when there was no large game to hunt? In the next chapter, you will learn about hidden sources of nutrients that modern people simply do not notice. The Stone Age diet was not just a set of calories, but a veritable natural pharmacy. People intuitively, or based on centuries of experience, chose foods that not only satisfied their hunger, but also supported their health. Many plants that we now consider weeds were an important part of their diet. The wild herbs and leaves they gathered contained a huge amount of phytonutrients. These biologically active compounds have anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, and antibacterial properties. In essence, every meal was a form of disease prevention. For example, dandelion or nettle leaves, which were certainly part of their diet, are rich in vitamins K, A, and C, as well as iron and calcium. Regular consumption of such greens strengthened their immune system and supported bone health. It was a natural alternative to modern multivitamin complexes. The internal organs of the animals we mentioned also played a role as medicine. Liver, for example, helped prevent anemia due to its high iron content. Brain and fatty fish provided omega-3 acids, which are necessary for cognitive function and reducing inflammation. Fermented foods may also have been part of their diet, albeit incidentally. Foods left out for a while began to ferment, enriching themselves with probiotics. These beneficial bacteria are essential for gut health, which is the foundation of immunity. Many of the berries they ate are powerful antioxidants. Blueberries, cranberries, lingonberries. These wild superfoods protected the body's cells from damage by free radicals. This slowed down the aging process and reduced the risk of many chronic diseases. Even the bark of some trees could be used for food and medicinal purposes. For example, the inner bark of pine trees contains vitamin C and can be used to make a decoction that prevents scurvy. This knowledge was critical for survival in winter. Dietary diversity was key to its benefits. Every day, people consumed dozens of different types of plants and animals. This provided a wide range of nutrients that cannot be replicated in a modern diet based on a few types of grains and meat. The absence of refined foods meant that their bodies did not suffer from chronic inflammation caused by sugar and industrial fats. Their diet was inherently anti-inflammatory. This is probably one of the main secrets of the health of Paleolithic people. Thus, food was inseparable from medicine. People did not treat diseases, but prevented them with their diet. This holistic approach to nutrition is what the modern world so desperately lacks. Plant foods form the basis of the diet in warm seasons and in regions with mild climates. Gathering was less risky and more stable than hunting. Stone Age people were true experts in botany, knowing hundreds of species of edible plants. Wild berries were the main source of sweetness. Unlike modern cultivated varieties, they were smaller, more acidic, and contained significantly more vitamins and antioxidants. Berry season was a time to stock up on vitamins before the long winter. Nuts and seeds were a concentrated source of energy, protein, and healthy fats. Forest nuts, pine nuts, and wild cereal seeds were all collected, dried, and could be stored for a long time. They were a strategic reserve of calories for lean times. The process of gathering nuts and seeds was laborious. Not only did they have to be found and collected, but they also had to be shelled or husked. Stone tools, primitive mortars, and pestles were used for this purpose. Edible leaves, stems, and flowers were also actively consumed. Young fern shoots, wild sorrel, clover flowers. All of these added fiber, vitamins, and minerals to the diet. Such food was low in calories but very nutritious. The fruits of wild trees, such as wild apples or pears, were a seasonal treat. They were hard, tart, and completely unlike their sweet modern descendants. But for primitive man, they were a valuable source of carbohydrates and pectin. Mushrooms also played an important role in the diet. They were gathered after rains and served as a good source of protein and B vitamins. Knowledge of edible and poisonous mushrooms was a vital skill passed down from generation to generation. Fiber was everywhere in their diet, in roots, leaves, nuts, and berries. It is estimated that they consumed up to 100 grams of fiber per day, while modern humans barely eat 15-20 grams. This ensured that their digestive system functioned perfectly. Plant-based foods were not only a source of nutrients, but also of water. Juicy leaves and fruits help maintain water balance, especially in hot climates. This was important in conditions where access to clean drinking water could be limited. In the next chapter, you will learn how Stone Age people obtained carbohydrates without the grains and bread we are familiar with today. The main source of carbohydrates for Stone Age people was not grains, but the underground parts of plants. The tubers, rhizomes, and bulbs of wild plants were veritable stores of starch and energy. Finding and harvesting them required considerable effort and special knowledge. Unlike modern potatoes, wild tubers were smaller, harder, and often had a bitter taste. They contained not only starch, but also large amounts of fiber. This slowed down the absorption of sugars and prevented sharp spikes in blood glucose levels. Special tools, digging sticks, were used to dig up the roots. These were pointed sticks made of hard wood and burned over a fire. This simple technology made it possible to obtain food hidden deep underground. Many wild root vegetables were toxic when raw. Paleolithic people developed complex methods of processing them. The tubers were soaked in water, boiled repeatedly, or baked in the ashes of a fire to neutralize the poisonous compounds. Baking in earthen ovens was a common method of cooking. A fire was lit in a pit, tubers were placed on hot stones, covered with leaves and covered with earth. After a few hours, the food became soft, sweet, and safe to eat. The roots of plants such as burdock or cattail could be ground into flour. This flour was gluten-free and rich in inulin, a beneficial prebiotic. It could be used to bake primitive flatbread on hot stones. The bulbs of wild plants, similar to modern onions or garlic, were also an important part of the diet. They not only added flavor to food, but also contained phytoncides, natural antibacterial substances. They were both a natural seasoning and a medicine. Harvesting underground parts of plants was a year-round activity. Even in winter under the snow, edible roots could be found if you knew where to look. This made them a reliable source of food when other resources were unavailable. The energy value of such a diet was high, but it had a low glycemic index. Carbohydrates entered the body slowly, providing a stable energy level for a long time. This was ideal for a lifestyle full of physical activity. These underground vegetables were the basis of carbohydrate metabolism for our ancestors. They provided energy for hunting and gathering without causing the health problems associated with modern refined carbohydrates. Water resources played a huge role in the diet of primitive people, especially those who lived near rivers, lakes, or seacoasts. Fish and seafood were an easily accessible and extremely nutritious source of protein. Their capture did not require the same risk as hunting large animals. Fish, especially fatty varieties found in cold waters, are a rich source of omega-3 fatty acids. These substances are critical for brain, heart, and vascular health. The constant presence of fish in the diet contributed to the intellectual development of our ancestors. A variety of tools were used for fishing. These could be pointed spears, bone harpoons, or primitive nets woven from plant fibers. People also built traps and weirs on rivers to make fishing easier. Shellfish and crustaceans were another important source of food. Oysters, mussels, and crabs could all be gathered in shallow water at low tide. Such food was rich not only in protein, but also in zinc, iodine, and selenium, trace elements that are rare in other foods. Archaeological finds around the world testify to the widespread consumption of seafood. Huge piles of shells accumulated over centuries are found at ancient campsites. These rubbish heaps are a valuable source of information for scientists. Aquatic plants such as algae may also have been part of the diet. They are a source of iodine and many other minerals. Eating algae prevented thyroid disease and enriched the diet. In the next chapter, we will talk about how Stone Age people preserved food without refrigerators and preservatives. One of the main secrets to the health of Stone Age people was not so much what they ate, but what they did not eat. Refined sugar was completely absent from their diet. This product, which has become the scourge of modern society, was simply unknown to them. The only sources of sweetness were ripe fruit and wild honey. Both of these products were seasonal and difficult to obtain. Wild fruit could only be found during a short period when it was ripe, and honey gathering was a dangerous and rare undertaking. Wild fruits were very different from modern ones. They were small, fibrous, with large seeds, and contained much less sugar. Their sweetness was moderate and always accompanied by a large amount of fiber. Fiber slowed the absorption of fructose into the blood. This prevented sharp spikes in sugar and insulin, which are the main causes of type 2 diabetes and obesity today. Nature itself created the perfect packaging for sugar. Honey was a rare and precious delicacy. Extracting it from wild bee nests required courage and skill. The small amount of honey obtained was eaten by the whole group and was more of a festive treat than an everyday food. Total sugar consumption was negligible compared to modern standards. Paleolithic humans simply did not have the physical capacity to eat the amount of sugar that is now contained in a single bottle of soda. Their taste buds were not overwhelmed by sweetness. The absence of sugar in the diet meant the absence of tooth decay. Studies of Stone Age human remains show that their teeth were in excellent condition until old age. Dental and gum disease only became a widespread problem with the advent of agriculture and sugar. Chronic inflammation caused by excess sugar was unknown to them. Their bodies did not waste resources fighting the consequences of poor nutrition. This allowed the immune system to effectively deal with real threats, war infections and injuries. The craving for sweets that modern humans have is an evolutionary mechanism. In conditions of calorie deficiency, it forced our ancestors to seek out rare and valuable sources of quick energy, ripe fruit. In a world of sugar abundance, this mechanism has turned against us. Thus, limiting sugar in the paleo diet was not a conscious choice, but a natural consequence of the environment, and that is what made them metabolically healthy. Two other classes of foods that were completely absent from the Paleolithic diet are grains and dairy products. Their widespread consumption began only with the agricultural revolution about 10,000 years ago. From an evolutionary perspective, this is a negligible amount of time for the body to fully adapt. Cereals such as wheat, rye, and barley contain gluten and lectins. These proteins can cause digestive problems and trigger autoimmune reactions in many people. The Stone Age human body was not adapted to digest them. In addition, grains contain phytic acid. This is an anti-nutrient that binds minerals, calcium, iron, zinc in the intestines and prevents their absorption. Regular consumption of unprocessed grains can lead to a deficiency of these important substances. Of course, Paleolithic people could have consumed wild cereal seeds, but this was rare. The process of collecting and processing them was too labor-intensive to make them a staple of the diet. It was more of a survival food than an everyday food. Milk and dairy products were also absent from their menu. Humans are the only mammals that continue to consume milk after infancy, and milk of a different species at that. Most of the world's population is still lactose intolerant. The ability to digest lactose in adulthood is a relatively recent genetic mutation that appeared in peoples engaged in cattle breeding. For Stone Age people, drinking milk would have been impossible and would have led to serious digestive disorders. In addition to lactose, dairy products contain casein, a protein that can also cause allergic and inflammatory reactions. Eliminating these potential irritants from the diet contributed to the health of the gut and immune system. Avoiding grains and dairy products did not lead to nutrient deficiencies. They obtained calcium from the edible bones of small animals, greens, and nuts. Carbohydrates came from root vegetables and fruits. Thus, the paleo diet was free of the most common allergens and anti-nutrients today. This made it hypoallergenic and easily digestible. The body did not waste energy fighting unsuitable food. This is why many modern diets aimed at improving health return to the principles of paleo nutrition in one way or another. They suggest excluding foods to which our species has not yet fully adapted. Modern consumer culture has taught us to be selective. We eat only certain parts of animals, the so-called muscle meat, throwing away the rest. Stone Age man could not afford such wastefulness. He used the whole carcass, following the nose-to-tail principle. This approach was dictated by necessity, but it also ensured an incredibly nutritious diet. Different parts of an animal contain different sets of nutrients. By consuming the whole animal, people obtain the full spectrum of essential elements. Muscle meat is rich in protein, but relatively poor in certain vitamins and minerals. Internal organs, on the other hand, are concentrated sources of these nutrients. Liver, kidneys, and heart are natural multivitamins. This approach ensured the intake of nutrients in their natural, synergistic form. Vitamins and minerals from whole foods are much better absorbed than their synthetic counterparts from supplements. Nature has already created the ideal combinations. The nose-to-tail principle was also applied to plants. Not only the fruits were used, but also the leaves, stems, roots, and seeds. This also ensured maximum benefit from each resource found. The modern diet, even if it consists of high-quality foods, is often unbalanced. We eat a lot of muscle meat, but few organs and connective tissues. This can lead to an imbalance of amino acids and a deficiency of certain nutrients. Returning to the principle of using whole foods is one of the lessons we can learn from the diet of our ancestors. It is not only beneficial to our health, but also more ethical and environmentally friendly. When talking about the benefits of the Stone Age diet, it is impossible to separate it from lifestyle. It was a diet in motion. Food was not delivered to the door. It had to be walked, run, climbed, and dug for, requiring considerable physical effort. Daily physical activity was not a choice, but a necessity. In order to obtain enough calories, a person had to be constantly on the move. This created an ideal balance between energy consumption and expenditure. The type of physical activity was as varied and functional as possible. It consisted of long periods of low-intensity walking, gathering, short bursts of high-intensity activity, hunting, and strength exercises, carrying prey, digging up roots. Today, this type of training regime is considered optimal for health. The absence of physical inactivity is the key difference between their lives and ours. Modern people spend most of their day sitting, which leads to metabolic disorders, muscle weakness, and weight gain. Paleolithic humans simply did not have this problem. Their bodies were perfectly adapted to such exertion. Strong muscles and healthy joints were not a goal, but a side effect of their lifestyle. Physical fitness was directly related to the chances of survival. Diet and activity worked in synergy. Food rich in protein and healthy fats provided energy for movement and material for building a strong body. In turn, constant activity allowed them to use the calories they consumed efficiently. Their health was the result of harmonious interaction with their environment. They ate what their bodies were designed to eat and moved the way they were designed to move. This simple but powerful principle is the secret to their endurance and health. We have traveled hundreds of thousands of years into the past and seen that our ancestors' diet was a complex and wise system. It was perfectly adapted to their genetics and lifestyle. Fresh, unprocessed food, a variety of nutrients, and the absence of harmful products made them resilient and healthy. Of course, their lives were full of dangers, and they faced challenges that we are unfamiliar with. But their example makes us think about our own choices. Perhaps the key to health lies not in inventing new diets, but in returning to simple and time-tested principles. The modern world will never be the same, and we cannot return to the caves, but we can take the best from the experience of our ancestors. Eat more whole foods, avoid sugar and processed foods, move more, and live in harmony with nature. What elements of the Stone Age diet do you think would be most beneficial to incorporate into modern life? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next explorations of the past.